going live with all of my classes. So you can actually see all of my classes. They're going to be on YouTube. So if you ever have free time and want to just take a look at the classes, you can do that. Or if you want to jump ahead and kind of see, or if you missed class, then you can always go back and see what you missed. So that'll be on there. Just waiting for it to load so we can get started. Take a look at the classes. Okay, cool. That is ready to go. And let's get started here. So the first part that we went over is how to find the whole of a rational function. So what you want to do to begin with is always just factor the rational function. So a rational function is when you have a polynomial in the numerator and the denominator. So this first problem here, x minus 5 divided by x squared minus 2x minus 15 is our rational function. And the top is already simplified, is already factored as much as it can be. Sorry, let me go back. Oops, too far. Wait, not too far. There we go. So we don't have to worry about the top, but the denominator, we do need to factor that. So it's going to be x minus 5. And we can factor the bottom. It'll be x and x. 5 times 3 is 15. And we want it to be a -2, so we need a -5 and +3. So that's factored completely. Now, the first thing that you want to do is look for any holes. And you know that there's going to be a hole when a factor cancels out. So we have x minus 5 on the top, x minus 5 at the bottom. So we know that there's going to be a hole where that factor is. I'm going to just go ahead and simplify this. So we have 1 over x plus 3. But in order to find the hole, we're going to take 2 steps. Yes, the notes should be on Schoology. I can't remember if I actually posted it on Schoology or if it's linked on the class schedule. I should have done both, but for sure it'll be on either one. I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, check the class schedule. If it's not on Schoology, it's in the class schedule for sure. Because I may have forgotten to post it. So the first step to finding the whole is actually taking whatever you just canceled out and setting that equal to 0. So we canceled out x minus 5. That means we're going to set that equal to 0 and then just solve for x. So x is equal to 5. And remember, a hole is a point. Like it's literally, if you have a line, if you take out a point, that's a hole. So a point consists of 2 coordinates, the x and the y coordinate. So it means the hole also has to consist of those 2 coordinates. So we've got the first coordinate, x is equal to 5. We need the y coordinate. So to find the corresponding y coordinate, you always want to take that x value that you just found, plug it into the simplified equation. Now this is where I see some people making a mistake. They plug it into the original. That's not where you want to plug it into. You want to plug it into the simplified equation. So that's why I went ahead, after I canceled it, I rewrote what I'm left with. So we were left with 1 over x plus 3. So that means I'm going to plug in 5 to all of the x's. In this case, there's only one x. So it's going to be y equals 1 over 5 plus 3. And that will become 1/8. So my answer, because a whole has to be written out like a point, will be 5, 1/8. That's my whole. Okay. Let me know if you have any questions. But that is that first problem. We'll go ahead and do number 2 as well together. So again, first step is simplifying. So we have to factor in order to do that. X minus 1 is already factored, so we'll keep that. X squared plus 4x plus 4, that's going to become x plus 2 times x plus 2. And then our denominator, x squared plus 2x minus 3. We'll break it down, x and x, 3 times 1 is 3. We want a positive 2, so positive 3, negative 1. From here, I can see that I have an x minus 1 up top, x minus 1 at the bottom. So I'm left with x plus 2 times x plus 2, technically x plus 2 squared, you could change that if you'd like, divided by x plus 3. So what did we cancel? We canceled out x minus 1. So that is what I'm going to set to 0. That means x is equal to 1. So that's the x coordinate. Next step, I need to find y. So I'm going to plug it into this simplified one, the one here in blue. And I have to plug it into every single x. There's 3 x's there. So that means it's going to be y equals 1 plus 2 times 1 plus 2 divided by 1 plus 3. And that's going to give us 3 times 3 is 9 divided by 4, so 9/4. So our whole will be at 1, 9/4. Okay. So there's 3 other characteristics that we went over. That is the vertical asymptotes, the zeros, and the y-intercept, and how to find each of those. In order to find each of those, we start with the simplified equation. So like in this case, we would start with 1 and go ahead and find the vertical asymptotes, zeros, and so forth. And then we would start with x plus 2 squared divided by x plus 3. So I'm going to jump down to the bottom here. This is that first problem there we see. We're left with 1 over x plus 3. We have the whole 5, 1/8. To find the vertical asymptote, you set denominator equal to 0. So you look at what your denominator is once it's already simplified. In this case, it was x plus 3. So you set that equal to 0. We get x is equal to -3. That's our vertical asymptote. To find the zeros, zeros is also the same thing as x-intercept. So keep that in mind. You take your numerator and you set that equal to 0. Now in this case, our numerator is just a constant number 1. So we can't, 1 is not equal to 0. We can't set those equal. So that means we have no zeros. So whenever you have just a constant, and that goes the same for the vertical asymptote. Let's say, for example, when you simplify, you're left with, let's say 2x plus 1 divided by 1, right? And then you go to set the denominator equal to 0, but you have 1 in the denominator. So then that would just mean you have no vertical asymptote. When there is no zeros, yeah, you can write no solution. So like, for example, here I could say no solution instead of no zeros. Yeah, basically there's no way of answering it because it doesn't exist. There's no, and 0 means that it crosses the x-axis. So basically this function never crosses through the x-axis. Yeah, so like I said for the video, just the way PlayPosit grades, like if you didn't write it exactly as how I wrote it, then it marks you wrong, but I can see your answer. So if I can see that it's something similar, then I know that you're understanding what I'm talking about. So don't worry about that. Okay. And then lastly, the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept for any function, you set x equal to 0. And in this case, there is only one x in the denominator. So we just plug that in You can see that right there. And we get 1/3. The intercept is actually just a point, right? So we can write it different ways. Sometimes we just care about what is the y value because we know obviously x is going to equal 0 if it's an intercept. So sometimes we can just write it as y equal to 1/3. But for the most part, we would want to write it as a point because it's the one point that is intersecting that y-axis. So it would mean x coordinate is 0 and y is 1/3. Same thing for a 0. If you had a 0, then you would have the x value and then your y would be 0. Okay. So that's that first example. The second example, we had two zeros. Well, 2 zeros. However, it was the same value, right? So we have to use multiplicity. Just like when we had polynomials, we did the same thing, right? When you solve the zeros of a polynomial, you can have a multiplicity. And that just means that it's going to be, rather than going through the x-axis, it's going to bounce off of the x-axis. I don't know if you guys remember that when we did polynomials and you did like the birthday polynomials and went over zeros of the polynomials. So that was just kind of a little reminder of that. So x equal to -2, we have a multiplicity of 2 because it is our 0 twice. The vertical asymptote comes from the numerator setting that, denominator setting that equal to 0, and we only had x plus 3. So that means the vertical asymptote is at x equal to -3. And then lastly, to find the y-intercept, we plug in 0 to all of the x's. So we see here, plugged in all those zeros, we get 4/3. So technically, we could write this as 0, 4/3. And then also the 0, we can write it as -2, 0. Okay. Any questions on those examples we just looked at? Okay. So let's see how much time we have. We get out of class at 12:20. Awesome. So we got like 30 minutes. So what I'm going to do is I will post the Kahoot assignment. Those of you who watched the video and are ready to just practice, you can go ahead and jump into Kahoot and you can just stay on here if possible. In case you have questions, I can answer your questions while you're working on it. I'm going to stay on here, and then for those of you who had issues with Play Pause It, I'm going to ask that you try and log in again right now and see if it works, and then if not, you can ask me and we can work through it and try and figure it out together. Okay. So let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to go ahead and post the Kahoot link.
Miss Martin?
Yes.
To find the vertical asymptote, do you just put the or set the denominator, like make the x 0, or?
Yeah, you set the denominator equal to 0, but you want to make sure you do that after you've already canceled out the whole.
So like you do it in the simplified form then?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, let's post that Kahoot link for you all. Yeah, Kahoot is due today. You should be able to finish it by the end of class. So I'm going to be posting another video for you to watch for homework. So I think I accidentally closed my Schoology. I got to open it up again.